Why do you think Buddhism was accepted by Tibet? Why not Hinduism?
That's a great question, actually. There are certain amount of Buddhist texts which were translated from Sanskrit to Tibet during the early spread of Buddhism and later spread of Buddhism in Tibet. Out of those old translations, we are not able to get the original text or manuscripts of those texts in Sanskrit. Some of maybe out of 7 or 8% of the manuscript are available right now. I was very young age and I came to India. When I was in my primary school, I often tried to open my eyes once again and again because I think it's a dream to come to India.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Jai and Bharat show. And today I'm here again in Sarnath in the Tibetan University. And today I have a very special guest with me. And guys, you're gonna love this because he's born in Tibet. And it's one of the special things about this podcast is he's coming straight from your community, deep down into from your roots. And right now he's here with me and he's teaching in the Tibetan language and literature and Buddhist history about how Buddhism spread after the I think sir invasions and everything went on in India, right, into the
Yeah.
Tibet,
Mm.
right? And it's an honor of my life to have him on my show. So thank you so much, sir. Today I introduce you all to Mr. Nima Tsering, sir. Thank you so much, sir, to be on for being on my podcast.
It's my honor. Thank
How
you.
are you, sir?
I'm great.
Sorry to pronounce the
It's okay.
name.
Absolutely fine. No problem.
Sir, first question which is coming to my brain
Mm.
is, do you remember your life in Tibet?
Yeah, I do.
So how was it?
It's kind of when I just try to recall it, it's kind of a very sad. First and foremost, I don't remember the happiness or the joyous moment that I have spent with my parents. But the thing is that it feels sad for me because I was very young age and I came to India, and I feel like in a dream. When I was in my primary school, I often tried to open my eyes once again and again because I think it's a dream to come to India. And from the other side, one great thing is that if I were in Tibet, maybe I'm not in a situation right now I'm having. I maybe my mom used to tell me that okay, if you are in Tibet, maybe you become jobless, or you may went to prison, or you may end up your life in somehow. But right now, despite all this sadness and all this, I still feel kind of a privilege to be here in India, and I have a chance to study Tibetan language and literature, Buddhist history, Buddhist philosophy, and having a doctorate degree. And that's unimaginable. This all comes from the grace of His Holiness, the Great Dalai Lama.
Sir, how was your experience in reading in your own culture, which is so vast? Like for me, the things that I have learned from Buddhism, I have not learned from anywhere else. For the meditation is just one part of it.
Yes.
Like for example, whenever I see people talk about Buddhism, the only thing they have only one tangent, that is meditation.
Yeah.
But it's way more than that. Like
Yeah.
you guys miss compassion. I have a lot of, for example, the quality of compassion,
Yes.
non-violence,
Yes.
and these are, for example, yesterday only I was talking to Tenzin Nima sir, and he told me about the 4 messages that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is preaching about, the non-violence and the compassion and the if may correct me if I'm wrong. And the third one was for the Tibet, freedom of Tibet.
Yes.
And the fourth one was to spread Buddhism in India.
Yes.
So not a lot of religion preach things like these.
Yes.
Like, so how was your experience in studying about Buddhist culture?
So the Buddhism spread to the Tibet. So many great translators, scholars who have put a lot of efforts to bring that very tradition and the wisdom to the Tibet. And now we feel like this Buddhism has taught something to change yourself into someone else. Not someone else who try to find your own goodness within you. For example, let me give you a very personal experience. When I was in Missouri, I was really, really kind of a short-tempered one. Really, even when we were kids and we used to play that pinball, so when we lose, I argue with my teammates. And then later, I got an opportunity to study here, and then maybe 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then time passes. But I never realized that I just naturally tamed the anger, the hatred, or the shortcomings that I have, literally. Right now, I'm not saying that I'm not getting any short-tempered or something like that, but in a general, I do get angry very, very hardly. So that is in a sense, it is the result of studying Buddhism. It is a result or a positive energy that I have imbibed from this environment and this very culture and the wisdom. That's it.
So let's go a little back in the past. So what was the journey of Buddhism from India to Tibet?
So if you look into the history, especially in the Tibetan historical books, we are able to understand that in 7th century, the Buddhism was introduced in Tibet by the emperor called Songtsen Gampo. But before that, there are some great sayings, or some people accept that the Buddhism was introduced prior to Songtsen Gampo. So Lhatodore, he is the 27th king of the Tibetan Yalung dynasty, and he, during his time, not literally, but in a general, he received 3 different Buddhist texts. So they don't understand because it's written in Sanskrit or something like that, but they don't understand, but they started to offer prayers or something like that. So in the meantime, according to Tibetan history, they believe that during that time, the Buddhism was introduced, not in a general, not in a literal. So during the 33rd Tibetan king Songtsen Gampo, he has accepted the Buddhism, as well as he sent a certain translator or Tibetan scholar to India to study Buddhism as well as Tibetan language and literature. But if we just look into the process, how it is being carried to Tibet or brought to Tibet, it's something different, because during that time, there's a very beautiful historical approach. Like during that time, there is no Tibetan script or Tibetan grammatical text. So he sent the Thumi Sambuddha, the minister, a very clever one, sent to India to learn the Sanskrit and then just to write and make a Tibetan script and Tibetan grammatical text. So through this method, and then they just started to introduce the Buddhism as well as the great Indian knowledge system to the Tibet. So he himself translated some Buddhist text, as well as the king himself studied them thoroughly. And then later, they have accepted the Buddhist kind of morality. They brought the Buddhist morality into constitution as well. So this is how the Buddhism was introduced in a literally or general for the general public as well. So after that, we can just go back to the 8th century. So this is one of the main or where the Buddhism was spread throughout the country, something like that. During that time, the king called Tisun Deozen, right? The Tisun Deozen, he is not only a powerful king, but he is more like he has kind of a great vision to introduce Buddhism in Tibet, as well as establishing a learning center in Tibet. For example, during that time, the Guru Rinpoche, as we all know, Guru Padmasambhava, so he is one of the Nalinda scholar as well. So he was invited in Tibet, and then with him, And after him, they invited Kamala Shil as well. So they have brought certain Buddhist texts to Tibet, as well as they started to translate those into Tibetan language, and then for those for the institution, for the learning process, they have established certain institute called Samye Tsuglakhan, Samye Monastery.
Samya Monastery.
Yeah. So where the Tibetans can learn the Sanskrit, Tibetan can learn the Buddhism, and in Samye Tsuglakhan is more like Nalanda in Tibet during that time.
So the original text of Buddhism was in Sanskrit.
Yes.
So then it got translated through the help of Tibetan scholars, which came to India, right?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe a naive question, but
Yes.
I'm really curious to ask this one. Why do you think Buddhism was accepted by Tibet? Why not Hinduism?
That's a great question, actually. So I think that Songtsen Gampo is considered as the first king who united whole Tibetan subcontinents. So during that time, the Burn tradition or Burn religion is being practiced during that time, his time, right? So if you just look through the perspective of political thing, then there are certain kings who patronage Burn religion. For example, the king of Shangjung, Limikya, he is a follower of the Burn religion. And
What was this religion, or a little bit of?
the Burn religion is indigenous religions of Tibet.
Okay.
So Songtsen Gampo wants to bring a certain changes in Tibetan society for all over the nation, right? Politically united living style, everything. So they need something which can give which could be an element for the people's mind, which could suffice the people's desire rather than Burn religion. So I think that Songtsen Gampo, due to certain need and certain requirements, politically, spiritually, so I think that he accepted Buddhism. So, but the thing is that why he doesn't accept Hinduism rather than Buddhism is something. For example, if you look into the history during that time in 7th century, the 7th century, India is not in a single king's rule, right? For example, during that time, Magadh is ruled by the 7th century. It's Gupta period, and then Gupta period during 7th century. Of course, Harshvardhana is one of the most powerful king during that time. So Harshvardhana patronized Buddhism. So that time, for example, if you just look into the learning traditions in the India, there are Nalanda, and of course Nalanda is one of the greatest learning center, and they most of the scholars are Buddhist, and they accept the Buddhism. Of course, the whole people, since the king patronized Buddhism, most of the people, of course, accept the Buddhism as well. So in India, the Buddhism is accepted by the whole kingdoms. Yeah, there are certain, of course, if you just look into the history of the South India as well as the Gujarat, they have so many Hindus as well. But according to the main or the power holders area, they accept Buddhism. So I think this is the reason that, of course, the Thimi Sambuddha, the great translator, and the Songtsen Gampo accepted one. So I think this is the one main impact why Songtsen Gampo has accepted Buddhism.
Yeah, like you also mentioned, like he was the one to unite the whole Tibet.
Yes.
The Tibet was also maybe divided into small
Yes,
kingdoms.
yes.
And then he was the one. So maybe, he needed something to hold everything together. Buddhism might be the diamond that
Yeah.
took everything in and made it united the Tibet.
Yeah. So on this regard, I think we need to discuss something more, because when Songtsen Gampo is a Yalung dynasty king, And there are another one which is Shangshung kings. There are some other kings as well who holds the eastern part of the Tibet, and there is a Sumba, which is another region or another area of the Tibet, which is more like currently Sichuan provinces. So there is a Sumba county, a Sumba region. So Songtsen Gampo only holds the power in the Yarlung and the central Tibet. And for the eastern, which is the King Limikya who holds the power. So Limikya patronage Bon religion, and Songtsen Gampo early time, of course, he accepted Bon religion as well, but during that time, a little, for example, his previous or his ancestor Latoduri Nyaltse also accept or introduce Buddhism. So might be this is the reason he has certain connection with the Buddhism. And then if we just want to bring a new tradition, new laws to kind of revolutionize the Tibet area, he needs a certain thought as well. I think this is the certain philosophical background why he just chose Buddhism.
So, sir, what was the impact of Buddhism in India at that time? For example, it got spread into Tibet. Right? How was this spreading going on in the continent?
You mean here in India?
Yeah.
So, if you look into the Buddhist history in India after the demise or enlightenment of Buddha, it came from a very long time, right? During 5th or 6th century is the period of Gupta dynasty, and 8, 9, 10 it's a Pala dynasty. So during that time, there are certain debates between Buddhism and the Hinduism. For example, in the Tibetan historical texts, we are able to understand that there are certain debate conducted or happened between the Shankaracharya and the Acharya Dharmakirti.
You are talking about Adi Shankaracharya?
Yeah, Adi Shankaracharya, yeah. So Adi Shankaracharya is in the 8th century, right? So Dharmakirti, they are in the Tibetan history. We are able to witness certain occasions where the Shankaracharya and the Bhatta Acharya had a debate with the Dharmakirti as well. So during that time, not only sometimes the Hindu practitioners or Hindu religions religion leaders or scholars won the debate, and sometimes the Buddhist scholars won the debate. And during that time, in the historical facts, we are able to understand that whoever patronaged the king, whoever patronaged the if the king patronaged Hinduism or if the king patronaged the Buddhism, or once the Buddhist scholar lost the debate, he or his followers have to just give his entire properties, like monasteries, properties, and temples, and everything to that winner. So this has happened from a very long time. For example, from the 6th century, from the 7th, 8th, 9th, that's it. For example, if you just even go prior to the history, this kind of events or this kind of events happened for a really long time. So that is how if there are kings who really do support the Buddhism, then the Buddhism spreads, and kings who don't support, then Buddhism diminishes. So that's the thing. When the power holder, like for example, the Pala dynasties, we can understand that they are like 19 kings, Pala kings, and at the very end of their reign, the kings are no more powerful as before. And then monasteries, and there is no patronage, there is no monastery, new monastery are built, no monks. So because if there is no king who support the Buddhism, then what monks will eat? That's the thing. And when the kings are so powerful, then let's take this example as well. For example, during the Devapala, so he was kind of a very powerful king of the Pala dynasty. And during that time, for example, Vikramshila Institute and the Somnath Puri Institute, they are all built. That's the thing.
So I never saw Buddhism through this perspective.
Mm.
A lot of political play has
Yeah.
been
Mm.
here there in the part to
Mm.
help spread Buddhism.
Yeah.
So, sir, you were talking about the Acharya Shankaracharya and the debates between him
Mm.
and the Dharmakirti.
Mm.
Do you know anything about the? Can you give some about the debates that they used to do?
Yeah, the thing is that okay, if we just try to just study on those cases in the Indian historical, um, for example, in Indian historical things, that I think that I didn't find any. But in the Tibetan history, for example, if you just look into the Taranatha history, Taranatha, who is one of the great Tibetan scholar, he's not an Indian Taranatha, but he has given the entitled this, he given this name. So in his history, there are certain events. Shankaracharya took rebirth, to defeat Dharmakirti as well. So there are certain historical in the Tibetan history, but not in the Indian history. Yeah. Mm.
So, sir, if you have to draw a line between the Indian Buddhism and the Tibetan Buddhism, what difference is there, if there's any?
In my own perspective, no, not in my perspective, maybe everyone accepts this one. So, if you just look into the history of Tibetan Buddhism, we are able to understand that before the fractions of Tibetan Empire, the Tibetan Yalung dynasty was lost their power after their last king, Langtharma. So after his demise, the Tibet was fractioned into so many subcontinents, we can say that, and it been remained like around 400 years. So before, it is in the historical text, it is being termed like an earlier spread Buddhism, and it was like can be considered when this during the King Songtsen Gampo and then Tison Dilsen to Rebelchen, maybe like for around like 300 years. For this, during that time, the text or the teachings or commentaries written, teachings of Lord Buddha and the commentaries written by the Indian scholars are being translated into Tibetan. So these are called the earlier spread of Buddhism. And after the fraction of Tibet Empire, and then it's been like after maybe 70 years. So Tibetan kingdom was fractioned after the death of Langtharma. It was around 840 something. So after 70 years, around 70 years, the latter spread of Buddhism emerged.
Okay.
So, and from them, there are so many great translators, which is who are one of the Lozawa Rinjin Sangpo, who is patronized by the one of the what to say, Gugi King, Halam young Gugi King. Gugi is a Ngari provinces right now. There is happen to be a king who is the genetically related to the Yalung dynasty king. So he, the latter he was conquering he was reigning at during that time. He patronized the Lozawa Rinjin Sangpo, and then from Rinjin Sangpo and other Tibetan translated so many Buddhist texts into Tibetan, and those are called latter spread of Buddhism. So, and then some others, like for example, Adisha was invited during that time, 10th century, 11th century, and then from Adisha they introduce or breed a new sect of Buddhism in Tibet, which is being called Kadamba. So from Kadamba can be considered as a source of entire, and not entire, maybe source of the Tibetan Buddhist schools, such as Kagyuba, such as Sakya, such as Giluk. These are the different schools of Tibetan Buddhism. So these are emerged or introduced or bred from the Kadamba tradition. So later, and they have certain different instructions. For example, if you just look into the history of the Kagyu tradition, Kagyu school, the Marba Lozawa can be considered as the founder. And if we trace the instructions he have received, it can be traced back to the Buddha, from the Naropa to Tilopa, and then that's it.
Okay. So, if you don't want to answer it, it will be fine because I'm asking a little out of syllabus.
Okay.
So, how does deities came into the Buddhism?
Deities.
Yeah.
Deities came into Buddhism.
Like, because I've seen the Matara.
Yeah, Mahatara.
It's a little, it's a lot similar to our Mahakali
Mm.
in India.
Mm.
So, and Kal Bhairav.
Mm.
And in the Buddhism, it's called,
Mm.
I think, Bhairava.
Mm.
So, a lot is similar to Hinduism when
Mm.
it comes to deities
Mm.
part. So, how does this comes into existence in the Buddhism text?
So, regarding the deities, if we just look into the history of Buddhism, whether in India or in Tibet, let's look into the India, right? So, when we talk about the how the Mahayana tradition being introduced, so it is after the Lord Buddha's enlightenment and the Mahaparinirvana, and maybe after 300 years later, there are so many disciples of Lord Buddha. So disciples, not really Lord Buddha's disciple, but later disciples, we can call them Nyantu, right? So Shravakayanas, right? Amongst them, there are some Mahayanists who listen or who take teachings, secret teachings from the their wisdom God, like we normally used to use this term God often, but in a really meantime, this is not a God. It can be said as a bodhisattvas, right? So they,
So, we're talking about in India, right?
yeah.
Okay.
So, for example, Manjushri. Manjushri can be considered as a bodhisattva. Matara is also a bodhisattva. So these are the future Buddha, yeah, according to the Mahayanist.
Okay.
So they are the future Buddhas, but in the really meantime, who has some certain faith to them, they will secretly give instructions to these very disciples. For example, if you just look into the history or autobiography of Chandrakirti, he has a blessings from the Manjushri. And if you just Pandit Shweta, okay, Chandrakirti, of course, he has blessings. And Dharmakirti, who has also a blessings from the Bodhisattvas.
So, how do they receive the blessings? Through meditation?
Yeah, there are certain, they are really beautiful historical fact or a story. For example, Chandragumi, everyone knows, right? So Chandragumi, he's a layman, ordinary like us, but he is very great scholar in Buddhism.
Okay.
So he secretly takes instructions from the Tara. That's the thing. So they, it's just like we do the meditation. We just try to suffice the requirements of the deity in some level, and then they grace us there some kind of supernatural powers or supernatural blessings. That is the same thing that they do. For example, if you are going to seek a blessing from the Matara, then you just pray her, just try to remember her good deeds, or offer certain methods to them, and then after maybe several times on this a pure faith, out of pure faith, they will give blessings to you. That is the maybe same methods as both Hinduism and Buddhist too.
Okay.
Mm.
So, I think a lot of scriptures might have been written through these blessings, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Can you name some?
Scriptures like, for example, Asanga. Asanga is the Togme we call in Tibetan. So Togme is one of the great Nalanda scholar. So there are a different point of views. Some says that he has some written certain books, Sadenga, we call it Chamjudenga, right? Chamchu Tenga is a Chamchu is a Gyawa Chamba. It's a future Buddha. So a Sangha went to heaven. It's like okay, use the term it as these normal terms, right? Heaven, yeah, mystical. A Sangha meditated to have a blessing from the Maitreya, the future Buddha, for 12 years.
Okay.
And after 12 years, and then he was blessed by the Maitreya. And then Maitreya took him to the heaven and showed him, given the tour of the heaven or something like that. And then Maitreya secretly gave him so many instructions regarding the dharma. And those, some people say that Thogme has written those dharma when he came back to earth. And some people say that, okay, these are the instructions given by the Maitreya himself. So these are kind of a histories are able to witness in so many historical literature.
Okay. Like, my mind is blown. So, sir, after the invasions through China,
Yes.
right, like Tibet suffered a lot.
Mm.
So how the Tibetan scholars at that time managed to take India, the Buddhism back to India, and preserve their own culture. How did this process?
So the thing is that whether the Buddhism will stay or will remain in a certain place can be based on whether they are monks or not. That is the thing. When we say that the Buddhism was introduced in Tibet, it means that during that time they have ordained, right, some novice. Of course, monks ladies become monk, and monks are the holder of the Buddhism. They do study, they do meditate, they do practice, right? At the same time, they do the meditation and they do give the blessings to the ordinary people. That's the thing. So after the invasion, so many Tibetan monks from the major Tibetan Buddhist schools came to India with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, along with some monks. If we just look into the histories written during that time, monks brought some certain kind of Tibetan text on their back, and that's for example, if you just go to our library, we have a collections of the Buddha's teaching and the commentaries of Buddha's teaching, which were given by His Holiness the Dalai Lama to this library. So, but these canons or sutras are offered to the Dalai Lama by the ordinary people who came to India from Tibet. So that's the thing, how they managed to do that. And after reaching here in India, first and foremost, His Holiness the Dalai Lama started to build Tibetan schools, and after that, with the help of individual Rinpoche, with their efforts and all this, they started to build their monasteries in everywhere.
But I read on Instagram that there are like a lot of books, right? So that are still not transcribed into Sanskrit or anything. It's still in Tibetan, and Tibetan scholars there are not much scholars left who can translate those texts.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So, do we think that there is a lot of research that is still in Tibetan language that if transferred into Sanskrit or in the languages that are more common right now will lead to more openings into the Buddhism? More, we can go into more depths and a lot of things might emerge.
Yeah. Okay. There are certain amount of Buddhist texts which were translated from Sanskrit to Tibet during the early spread of Buddhism and later spread of Buddhism in Tibet. So if you just look into the Tibetan Buddhist text, we are able to observe there are certain publications. For example, right, we have different publications like Al-Hasa, Derge, Nathang, maybe around 12 or 13 different publications of the Tibetan Buddhist teachings, right? So some of the out of those old translations, we are not able to get the original texts or manuscripts of those texts in Sanskrit. Some of maybe out of 7 or 8 percentage of the manuscript are available right now, right in this very time, but not them. So right now, this project or the work is carried out by the Rahul Sankartya. Those started to do that. For example, they went to Tibet, and then they just Rahul Sankartya, yes. They went to Tibet, and they tried to find the manuscript, and they tried to bring those old manuscript back to India. And of course, some manuscript, those are the amount of manuscript available during that time. And some other, if you just go to some other places like some old monasteries or under the stupas, we are able to find certain amount of manuscripts. So those are still available. So many manuscripts are being taken by the Chinese government as well. So right now,
destroying it or they're preserving it?
they will preserve. Of course, this will be a national treasure. Of course, they will preserve. And then right now, one of the key or the prime responsibility of this university is to restore all those lost texts which are in Sanskrit, which are nowadays it is not available, right? So they were just trying to restore them from the Tibetan text as well. So nowadays we have a few scholars who are good in Sanskrit and who are as well as in Tibetan.
Sanskrit is also a very rare language. Right?
Yes, yes.
A lot of people don't even know.
Yes, yes. You should have listened the Sandor Rinpoche's speech, which he has given day before yesterday. Yeah, then you will understand why the importance of restoring those into Sanskrit manuscript, Sanskrit language. Yeah.
So, can you give us a little about what he said? Why is it important?
So, okay. If I just say some word right now, it can be changed.
Okay.
Of course, for example, if I say some word and you understand that, and when you just try to convey this message to someone else, it will be changed. But one thing is that the letter cannot be changed. For example, if we find a message from the original text, this meaning won't be changed. So, the Tibetan text, which are being translated from the Sanskrit, if we just restore it in the original way into Sanskrit, the meaning won't be changed. That is the main kind of essence of the talk he has given.
It's a pretty big thing that needs to be done.
Yeah.
To understand what's behind, what might be hidden behind these messages.
Yes, that's the thing.
Yeah. So, sir, last question. You've been studying this your whole life so far, right?
Yes,
Buddhism
yes.
And history of Buddhism. What is that one thing or two things that have been stuck with you that you want to give to the audience who's listening?
So nowadays, for the information of the information regarding the Buddhism and any subject, it's very easy to get available, right? But in a really meantime, if we can't practice or imbibe the true meaning of those very message or knowledge, then I think that, okay, we will be a radio or something like that, really. For example, right now I have shared what I have learned. Those are just a knowledge, right? If I can't practice those given messages in my life, maybe a minute, then it's kind of a useless, really.
Exactly.
Nowadays, for example, I did my PhD on the Smriti Upasthana, which is more like a mindfulness. It's being translated into mindfulness. It's nowadays people say mindfulness. It's more like a contemplation. But if I can't focus my mind on what right now I'm doing, then I think that my PhD has no value. Maybe for the other people, it's kind of a bunch of knowledge, but for me, it's really useless. Really. For example,
If
yeah.
you don't use it, it's
Mm.
of no use.
Yeah. For example, we made this mic. If it doesn't work, it's in best. Then what is the use, right?
Exactly.
For example, nowadays, sometimes I just introspect myself. Like I did my PhD on the mindfulness, but I often just look at my phone. My mind is all distracted to the social medias and all this, and sometimes I feel like guilt to what I've did till now. Really.
Well, I feel there's no need to feel guilt about.
No.
Yeah.
That big, the guilt, something like I can't practice
Yeah.
what I've learned, what I did.
Exactly. But that's the fight that you have. every
Yeah,
day.
that's the thing.
Yeah, that's something you have to fight
Mm.
every day. Consistency is the
Mm.
key, right? So, thank you so much, sir, for
Thank-
being on the show. It's a pleasure for me to have you on my show. I love our conversation. A lot
Yeah.
of things that you have opened a lot of doorways in my brain, which I
No,
will research,
really.
and then we'll have one more then
Okay.
again sometime.
Thank you so much. Though I'm not really a kind of scholar in Buddhist philosophy, but I aspire to. Really, till now, what I have shared might have so many mistakes regarding the context, regarding the dates or historical approaches. But if you just look deep down, I hope that it may give you some kind of a new curve to look into the history of Buddhist philosophy, as well as the history of the Tibetan Buddhism. And it's my privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.